Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for Smart Port Challenge 2023 Roadshow. It's also known as SPC. So today during the roadshow, we'll hear from our corporate sponsors who are contributing and have contributed to the innovation opportunity that we'll be sharing more about today. So my name is Jadine. I'm a program manager at Pier 71 and I'll be the moderator for today. So in case you're not familiar with SPC, it's actually a flagship event of Pier 71, which stands for Port Innovation Ecosystem Reimagined at Block 71. And it's a program which is co-founded by MPA as well as NUS Enterprise. So for Pier 71, we focus very much on the R, which is reimagining technology for the maritime space. So no worries if you're not in the maritime space yet, our program will give you exposure to that. And for those in the maritime space, you can always deepen your networks in this industry. So this year, we have 13 innovation opportunities which are championed and supported by the corporates here as well as a wider reach of corporates. There are more than 20 maritime organizations and corporates. So for the roadshow today, we'll be hearing about the innovation opportunity on biofuel, which is how can we increase the adoption of biofuels through assurance of their quality as well as traceability. So before we head on and start the session, I would like to show a video from SMS Chi Hong Tan. So could I have the video on screen, please?
Hi everyone, I'm happy to join you today to share about the Smart Port Challenge, Pier 71's flagship initiative. Over the years, the challenge has catalyzed many maritime innovations, enhancing Singapore's standing as a leading global maritime technology hub. This year's innovation statements cover 3 important focus areas for maritime Singapore. First, sustainability to promote the use of green and clean energy and technology. Second, digital transformation to drive efficiency and transparency throughout the supply chain. And third, innovative solutions to enhance the safety and efficiency of port and ship operations. Pier 71 serves as a launchpad for maritime startups to expand their networks, forge partnerships across borders. Over the past few years, the maritime industry and investors have put in $50 million into Pier 71 startups, supporting their expansion in Singapore and overseas. Our Pier 71 alumni have not only raised significant capital, but have also made their mark globally. I'm encouraged to see the growth and success of our Pier 71 alumni as they expand operations and scale up their product offerings. We are proud of their achievements, the value they bring to the industry. Our startup community has taken the initiative to form the Pier 71 Circle to commemorate Pier 71's 5th anniversary. The Pier 71 Circle is an alumni club where members can remain connected wherever they are in the world. The club will also allow members to use their expertise and experiences to benefit future cohorts and to create a thriving startup community for the maritime industry. If you are an aspiring entrepreneur or maritime startup in Singapore, the Smart Port Challenge 2023 awaits you. Come join us to solve the most pressing challenges facing the maritime industry and be part of this exciting journey to shape the future of maritime Singapore.
So as shown on the last slide of the video, applications for Smart Port Challenge are open till the end of this month, 31st July. So I'll quickly give a little bit more context into this innovation opportunity. So biofuels are actually a promising option for the maritime sector to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions owing to their drop-in characteristic, which is the ability to replace conventional maritime fuels without substantial modifications. However, the adoption of biofuel faces several hurdles. Biofuels with fatty acid methyl esters content are prone to degradation, and traceability is also a concern as well. So furthermore, there's also actually a shortage of biofuel feedstock globally, and some ship owners in Singapore might be a bit hesitant to use biofuels given the higher cost as well. So let's jump in to our innovation opportunity. I'd like to invite our speakers to introduce themselves as well as what they do. So maybe I'll start with the first person I see on my screen. So Ben, that will be you.
Great, lucky me. Hi everyone, very excited to be here. My name's Ben Hadfield. I head up the digital department at Swire Shipping here in Singapore. Swire Shipping is alongside our sister company, Swire Bulk, the shipping and logistics arm of the John Swire and Sons group. And last year we celebrated our 150th anniversary, and as a ship owner with such a long history, as well as a large amount of ships that we operate and manage as well as own, it's obviously very critical for us in order to secure our future in terms of understanding how we can transition to a decarbonized future. So the company is very much involved with the Mercer McKinney Center of Decarbonization, as well as the GCMD, where we're trialing various alternatives. From my perspective, it's really about how do we engage our customers in helping us through that adoption, because it obviously, to your point, Geraldine, doesn't come cheap as well. But very excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Ben. Next person on my screen, Carming.
Hi, I'm coming from Equatorial Marine Fuel Management Services. For Equatorial, generally, we provide physical bunker. We also trade fuel. And in 2022, Equatorial has the highest volume of fuel being traded in Singapore. And generally, at this moment, we are very much committed to having renewable and sustainable energy as part of our portfolio. And I'm heading the Sustainable Energy Department. We would like to definitely be supporting Singapore in the top bunkering hub, not just for conventional fuel, but also for renewable future in near future as well as in long term. Thank you.
Thanks, Carming. Next person on my screen, Rohit.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Rohit Kapoor. I'm an ex-master mariner. Used to sail in a previous life. I head up ship management function for TK Tankers. TK Tankers is a New York Stock Exchange listed tanker operator, where we operate mid-size tankers, which are Aframax and Suezmax ships. So my job involves safe carriage of crude products or crude across the world, like a taxi service, tramping around the world. So it's and we are the consumers of fuel, and in future, hopefully, biofuels as they're made available. So in this context, I'm happy to be here and contribute to the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Zhenzhen.
Hi everyone, I'm Zhen Zhi from Victory Private Limited. We are a bunker supplier, similar to Equatorial. The reason why we are here is that we wish to adopt biofuel. Of course, this is to reduce the greenhouse gas emission like everyone. And also, one of the key things that we're looking at is actually energy security and diversification, because biofuel will be sort of another type of fuel that we can add to our portfolio. Thank you.
Next time for our list, Dr. Imran.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Imran. I'm the Program Director for MESD, or Maritime Energy Sustainable Development for short. We are housed in NTU, or Nanyang Technological University. As the name suggests, MESD has been researching on alternative fuels for the maritime since 2017. On biofuels, we are actually about to release our study on the feasibility of adopting biofuels for the hovercraft sector, where we studied the blends mainly for B30 and partly for B100. So on our next phase of the study, we are looking into the adoption of B100, in particular to support MPA's requirements that all new hovercraft operating in the port waters have to be fully electric, be compatible with net zero fuels or B100 biofuels. So if there are any interest to collaborate in the study as well as on other alternative fuels, do reach out. I'm looking forward to the discussions.
Okay. Bernard, could you like to introduce yourself? Bernard, I think you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, there I go again.
Yeah,
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bernard from KSC Maritime. We are harbour tug operator. Basically, we're present in Singapore and Malaysia. We are actually owned by our Italian owner, which is based in Genoa, and worldwide fleet, we have 160 vessels. So we are very much obliged, like everyone else, to contribute to the reduction in emission. Therefore, our interest here is to see what we can do with regards to the biofuel, perhaps share experience, let everybody know from a tug owner and operator perspective what are the challenges that we have. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Last but not least, Colin.
Hi everyone, my name is Colin. I'm the CTO for Equatorial. So my colleague coming here heads up the sustainability side. So I actually run the digitalization, tech and IT projects for Equatorial itself. So we believe that digitalization goes step in step with sustainability, things like carbon tracing, support. So some of the projects and initiatives that we're looking at. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, everyone. To the attendees who are on this call, if any questions, just drop them into the Q&A box and we will share them with the corporates who are here with us today. So to kick off the session, I do note that the topic of adopting biofuels is the main topic for today. But I want to ask, what are some of the challenges or some of the barriers that you have faced when adopting biofuels? Anyone can begin.
Maybe I can go first, because we are asset owner, which actually will need to adopt biofuel sooner or later, I think. Well, I think biofuel, on one hand, is a very useful adoption and easy adoption for us because we don't make any physical changes to the vessels. But at the same time, I feel there will be lack of information, example, the standards or supply chain aspect, where to get them from and things like that, so that we are quite hesitant to go on board. In fact, we don't know who to go to. So this is one of the challenge at this point in time. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Anyone else like to jump in?
Yeah, I'd probably second what Bernard is saying. As for us, I think it is also, of course, there is movement happening on the regulatory front now in terms of biofuels, and the latest MEPC 80 has also addressed that. So there is clarity on the correction factors, because till that we were still, you were paying top dollar for biofuel where it was available, but you were still not reaping the benefits of burning biofuels in the engine. So that is one good positive move, which I'm sure is going to now facilitate further adoption of this. Second, for us, of course, the biggest challenge by itself is the topic of this conference, which is the traceability and the and the whole documentation. And just because we are the ones who are going to carry the biofuel, who are going to burn it, and who are going to be analyzed at various ports, so the authenticity of the fuel, the proper documentation is very, very key and very critical to this to adoption. As far as using the biofuel is concerned, and in terms of fuel availability or as a different fuel to fossil fuel, I think it is one of the easiest switches.
Thanks for sharing, Rohit. Anyone else like to jump on this question? Okay, if not, I actually have a follow-up for you, Rohit. You did mention traceability and documentation. Just wondering, what are the current technologies that you're using for any kind of traceability or documentation of, say, like other fuel?
So for the other fuel, it's still very, very, in the sense, you're still relying on the bunker delivery notes that the suppliers are kind of providing you. You are doing your own testing. I think there is not a single operator in the world who just relies on the BDN by themselves. We do our own testing. And then, of course, the ship is subject to, at times, by various port states and ports around the world, where they take samples and do the testings themselves. So in terms of traceability, like many other ship owners, we've also burnt our fingers where non-compliant fuel has come on the ship, and it's a nightmare. Neither can you burn it, neither can you offload it. So it's and not only that, it's also about the quality of the fuel that is coming in, which apparently on paper looks very clean, but in actuality in the tank is a difficult beast to tackle, right? So and then that goes on to additional requirement for crew, additional expenditures in terms of spares. So as of right now, I think it is it is an area which still needs to mature and develop much more, even for the conventional fuels that we use.
Okay, thanks. I do see there will be one question, so maybe you'll take that first. Question is, must mass flow meters be recalibrated when bunkering biofuel? Open question to...
I can answer that. We are using Amazon. We did check with Amazon before. They say there's no need to recalibrate or do any verification.
Okay. The anonymous attendee, I hope that answered your question. If you need any follow-ups, do let us know. Okay, so let me quickly press done. Yeah, I just want to ask Dr. Imran, you mentioned just now you're working towards the B100 fuel. So I just wanted to understand a little bit more on some of the challenges, so that, since you're calling for startups to work together with you or solution providers, so they can understand, what exactly they might need to work on to cover this gap that currently exists.
Yeah, I think what's missing, at least from our end, is a realistic and representative trial to be testing biofuels. There are already some mitigation methods to ensure stability of the biofuels by editing, of course adding additives and so on. But then would result in perhaps also a change in the maintenance regime of the vessel. So these are all question marks and unknowns, and until we have perhaps a long-term trial, this will still remain as an unknown. So I think that the focus of our study will be trying to provide at least assurance to the owners that biofuels, while still it's a drop-in fuel, it's feasible, and it won't perhaps cause as much harm to the engines. And then and if so, how often do you have to then do the maintenance, perhaps at a shorter time frame?
Thanks for sharing. Actually, I do want to circle back to the topic of traceability and documentation. It's the main topic for this innovation opportunity. Just wondering, for traceability, because Rohit, you did share how you currently do it. Wondering if anyone else would like to share how traceability is currently done in your organizations. Okay, if not, if
Maybe
not,
I can substantiate a bit on that. I mean, we've encountered some studies where you put a chemical tracer as a compound, into the fuel, and then you can from there see the whole transfer of the biofuels from well, to the propeller. So at least from that, you would be able to ensure that this is the correct amount of, or at least the correct quality of biofuels that have been used, and therein is the traceability of the biofuels.
Thanks for sharing. Just wondering. Oh, sorry.
I can add there. I think when we're looking at traceability, to my mind, I think there are two aspects of it. One is, of course, the physical aspect of it, which is the physical fuel by itself, and the other is the paper trail of it, or the digital traceability, right? And as Dr. Bram was saying, it's like from the source and all the way till the tank of a ship, in the sense whether it's the source is intact, whether it's been diluted, whether it's been added. So by the time it gets into the tank, what life cycle has it gone through coming into the tanks? And at the same time, you need to have, people are talking about lots of technologies coming in terms of digital traceability, right from source to provided at a common safeguarded source. That is also very, very important. And I think probably ports or administrations will have to take charge of that, so that that confidence is there, because going into the regulatory regime, not having in your tank as to what you have, the certification for the paper is going to be a massive issue going ahead.
Thanks for sharing. I think you did actually allude the next question that I wanted to ask a little bit more on, which is what is a solution that you'll be looking for, especially in this space? I mean, there is definitely the one that you mentioned, which is what most people look for, traceability, how you can see from end to end. Just wondering if there are any other solutions out there that you'd like to share with the community that you have today.
Yeah, maybe I mean, you mentioned earlier the MEPC 80, and I think, a big thing that came from that is that basically well-to-wake assessment, the life cycle assessment of different fuels. And I think that that's really critical, is, we're not big enough to really have the same influence that some of our peers, like the mainline operators, may be able to have. And it's really important for the smaller or medium-sized guys like us that there is proper standards that are set. Typically these come from Europe, but we don't ply our trades in Europe. We ply our trades in the South Pacific, where regulation certainly isn't there, and supply chains just literally don't exist. Most of the ports that we call in the South Pacific, we can't even get heavy bunker fuel because there is no supply chain that goes there. We've got to put diesel in our engines, which to me is going back to your initial question, is a major issue for us, is the fact that the supply chain really doesn't exist, and most likely in our markets won't exist until it exists pretty much everywhere else in the world. But that life cycle assessment, and really the IMO needs to, in my view, drive those standards and not keep it as a EU dependent. At the moment, really those standards for the quality of the biofuels are coming through the ISCC or the RSB. But again, it kind of stops. In terms of their enforcement, it really stops as soon as it steps out of the EU. So being in a position, where Singapore is really a hub for shipping, you would expect that perhaps this is where the government should be working with the governments in ASEAN and APEC to really drive those standards in, what is probably some of the busiest shipping lanes in the world.
Thanks for sharing, Ben and Line. Anyone else would like to jump on this question? Since I have a question for you, actually. You did mention just now that Victory is working towards adopting biofuel. So just hope you could share a little bit more on some of the efforts Victory has taken.
While we are on that journey, there's actually a few challenges that we faced. One would be the testing of the fuel. It takes around 1 week for the COQ to be out. So one of the opportunity here would be, to develop some sort of quick test test kit, which users can even use it on board. Then it sort of give them a confidence level, to want to adopt the fuel. So that is one of the major things that we face.
Okay, thanks for sharing. I see we have a question, maybe you'll take that first. Question is, do ships need to change engines and pipings to use various grades of biofuels? Anybody?
No, you don't. In the sense, it's as long as certain mixing ratios as per quality certificates or whatever are meeting, it's not really required, because we don't need to do that even when we change conventional fuels right now.
Okay, I think that's good. Maybe to just clarify, so it means even the current fuels, you don't have to change any kind of piping, so that will be the same for biofuel as well.
Yeah,
so not really a barrier in terms of adopting biofuel, you would say.
So you would definitely have different storage systems, as in like you would have to dedicate tankage within the ship for biofuels if you're going to have that as a fuel option on the ship. So you can't really very easily change from the tanks that you're using for biofuels, and then you start using VLS. So there's a certain amount of cleaning procedures and stuff will need to be done. But apart from that, it's from feeding into the engine per se perspective, the pipelines, you don't need any modifications as such.
Okay. Just jumping.
So if I can add on, I think earlier on, Dr. Imran did mention that biofuel may affect the maintenance of the machinery engine. So you don't have to change anything actually, but you do have to take note that biofuel may have certain effect on certain components and parts of the engine. So I believe these are still being tested by NTU. So at this point, I also want to bring up a concern that we owner and operator has, is that what does the OEM say? What does the engine maker say? Most of them are okay with B30 at this point in time, but I've spoken to a lot of them for B100. They have not tested it to that B100 level. So that could be potentially a challenge, even if the fuel is available. If the OEM don't say that you can use it, then potentially owner and operator may have a deterrent or the unwillingness to use that fuel. Yeah.
Thanks, Bernard, for sharing. Anyone else would like to add this question? Actually, if not, I want to ask.
Yeah, maybe I can add in as well. I guess in our 6-month study, we did sort of look into filter seals and gaskets, as well as the fuel oil pump assembly. I think we noticed some degradation in that, but not as obvious, I would say, or not as critical. But it was a 6-month trial. So the question then is whether again it's realistic and representative, I guess. So in addition to the sea trials, we also did a survey against the engine manufacturers. And I think our results only found that only 7% of the engine manufacturers out of the 30 that we surveyed at least mentioned that they are ready for B100. So it's limited in that sense.
Okay. My follow-up question was actually, because Rohit and Bernard, you did mention that, because there are some environments in the ship where you have to take note. Also just wondering if there are any further areas that solution providers have to take note of when crafting a solution, especially if you're doing it in a ship environment. Can be something a bit more basic also, because I think there's some people online who are not yet in the maritime industry. So it'll be good to share more.
Okay, for me, I had some experience with biofuel, basically B30, because Indonesia mandated some years back. So my previous organization, the people that I work for, operates in Indonesia. So we use that fuel. So what we learned from there is that you've got to be very careful with biofuel because of they are nature to absorb water. So water is one component you need to be beware of. So that's why we install a pre-filter to take out the water. And let's say if you put in the tank for too long, because of them being in storage, again, they can absorb water. So these are the few characteristics of biofuel. It's not very challenging to overcome. It's easy once you are aware. So probably this kind of knowledge needs to be out there so that people understand how to manage the new fuel that we're going to get. Yeah.
Exactly. Anyone else got anything else to add for this question? Okay, so I see a few other people have joined us. If you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A chat box. A good opportunity to ask the corporates your questions. Yeah, so actually we've been talking about solutions for quite a while. So just wanted to ask what are some matrices for success? So what would be considered a successful solution to you, to your company? Or maybe I could rephrase it in terms of what is important to you in a solution. So for example, they have to know the standards, they have to have teams that are in the same country where you're operating, anything along these lines?
Maybe I can start first. I think the main thing again is the OEM acceptance of the fuel, because I think once OEM can accept the fuel means that they have gone through a lot of tests and consideration. I think to me this is the most important. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Colin, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I guess I fully support what Bernard has spoken. And generally, for myself, previously I also conducted some of the biodiesel for up to E30 grade. And we can see that before we really put in on a vessel, we kind of like do over a short test. It means a controlled environment result. Basically, we work with some of the engine manufacturers like MAN engine to run on a high-speed engines. We run running period of 500 and 1,000 hours. We record and we remove things like the fuel injectors, we remove things like the fuel pump, we look at the water content, and we will, from then on, we will decide what kind of water filters or separators to put inside the system, and also the degradation of the fuel injectors and the fuel pump, how will it actually divide. So there are currently quite a few ways, right, that if you say to really say that it's a successful trial, I would say that we must have a controlled environment followed by the testing. And when we're running a period over a period of time, maybe 6 months and a few thousand hours, or even up to 5,000 hours a year, then the results will be a bit more conclusive. And generally, I think there are quite a number of what we call trials that have been conducted up to V30. And even many engine manufacturers, regardless whether they are in Asia or all the way until Europe, they are very keen in knowing that what B100, B50 or B70 can bring to the performance of their engine. So these are something that if we can conduct in Singapore, a limited control environment with enough study, I think that would really be very useful for us. Yeah.
Thanks, Kami, for sharing. Colin, do you have anything to add?
I think my part is more on the digital tracing portion. So I think for us it's also about how can we integrate this with our systems, such that whether it's a certification or if we have to do calculations, it can be easily shared with our partners upstream and downstream as well.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Did someone say something? Okay, I think I have another question. Is it possible to produce B100 fuels? If it's not happening now, then when? And what is the biggest stumbling block?
Maybe I'll take that part. For us, even at Equatorial Marine Fuel, we definitely will look all the way from B5 to B100 biofuel. In fact, there are a very limited number of suppliers in Singapore in a smaller scale that can produce up to B100 biofuel. It is possible. One of the biggest stumbling blocks, I think, whether is it as a vessel owner, vessel operator, or even as a bunker supplier, the biggest stumbling block is always the premium that will be on top of the conventional marine diesel, the kind of price that we have to pay for various grades of biodiesel. So if we talk about B100 biofuels now, I think the premium should be very high. Even the source, let's say, is from Ukome or used cooking oil. So if you ask me, the price point is still the #1 concern for any operators or ship owners.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Okay, so I think we have another question. This question is, how can the Singapore ecosystem ensure that the biofuels are not produced using restricted feedstocks such as palm oil? There's an increasing concern about fraud in this market in Europe. Anyone like to take the question?
Maybe I'll take this part. If we look at the international market, especially for biofuels that are supplied to Europe, basically we have a certification called ISCC, which is actually to track the traceability of the feedstock from the manufacturer storage all the way to the supply and trading of it. So effectively, for example, if palm oil is something which is not supported in the EU or European Union side. When that's why we may have to go into other sources such as Eucome or even HVO to be able to supply to these countries. And the traceability will have to come from a certain certification, like for example, ISCC in the UK. So if Singapore wish to develop something on an ecosystem that is suitable for the traceability, we can actually look at existing standards and also develop our own standard PR and SS, etc., so that we can have greater accountability and traceability. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Kaming. I think I would like to round up this session. Thanks everyone so much for sharing your knowledge, and especially with all your various different backgrounds. I think it was really insightful. So to round off, I have one quick question for everybody. What is one takeaway point you want our audience to remember? I'm going to start from backwards. So Colin, I'll start with you.
Means specific to the challenge, right?
Yeah, specific to the challenge.
I think it's always the business viability of the solutions that we can see, because I think it has to be implemented at the vessels. It has to be commercially viable. So I think there's a lot of these kind of considerations that usually harder to consider at in an innovation challenge. So I think that's one of the key items that we like participants to take note. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Colin. Bernard?
I think the key takeaway here is that we are all facing a common challenge and actually going for the common goal. So we need to consider at the end of the day what we are trying to achieve here. So from an owner and operator perspective, we are more than willing to adopt and use the solution out there. However, at the same time, we also need to be mindful that it doesn't disrupt our business at the same time. Yeah.
Thanks, Bernard. Dr. Imran?
Yeah, I guess I go back to my earlier point of crafting or developing a real and representative trial, shipboard trial or sea trial of biofuels utilization on a vessel. So yeah, we are always on the lookout to partnering like-minded partners, in developing this sea trial.
Yeah, there's a shout out to anyone who wants to partner with Dr. Imran. If you don't have his contact, you can always let me know. Happy to form the connection as well. Zhen Zhi.
Hi, sorry. I guess to adopt this biofuel, we also need to look at the life cycle greenhouse gas emission. We do not want to, replace the fuel and then we add on to the overall environmental impact and then generate more emission just to produce a biofuel. So that's very important for us.
Yes, thanks for bringing up that point. Rohit.
Yeah, I pretty much second that. And I think, first of all, it needs to be, depending upon what kind of an initiative somebody's getting into, it needs to be cost effective. It needs to drive that CO2 reduction that we're kind of looking at. Otherwise, it's pointless, right? And it should have the scalability. It should have a speed. The speed of scalability should be there at the end of it. So I think those would be key takeaways from my end. Yeah.
Thanks, Rohit. Coming.
Yeah, I guess all of us have spoken quite a few things from talking about the traceability and also the reliability and how we should retrofit, for example, shipboard for testing biodiesel. One thing that we can also look at is that generally, even though biodiesel efficiency, we don't really quite see a certain drop in efficiency when using biodiesel compared to conventional fuel. But if, let's say, for example, there will be some of the innovators out there who can actually do a comparison by looking at the vessel load profile, the data, the propeller efficiency, amount of actual output load that has been generated by burning biofuel as compared to diesel, as well as measuring the CO2 emission content, then I think when we look at the totality of the biofuel economy and also the viability, I think that is something that we can really look at and develop. Then we can actually show to whether the users, owners, or customers that you see by using biofuel, it's not just a lower life cycle greenhouse gas emission, but in terms of efficiency and also the burning of the fuel can bring about a better performance to the ship as compared to HFO or conventional fuel. Maybe we can look into more on the study of that. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Coming, for sharing. And lastly, definitely not least, the end of session, Ben.
Yeah, thanks. I guess first and then last, yes. But yeah, I guess a takeaway that I'd like to share with the group and the attendees is that, however humble it is, Swire Shipping's goal and interim goal for 2030 is that we use 5% of our fuel is through near zero or net zero emission fuels. In order to really enable that, it needs to be commercially viable. So there's an availability standpoint to that. We can't be having to force ourselves to change our network to just fit in bunkering ports. So that availability and supply chain, it just needs to be there. When it comes to quality and traceability, to Colin's point regarding commercial viability, at the end of the day, we serve these areas because we have clients that need cargo there. They need to recognize the impact that we're able to provide on the environment through taking lower emitting fuels, and that price needs to be passed on. And so having a clear understanding of quality and traceability allows us to paint that picture much more clearer to beneficial cargo owners. And by doing so, the opportunity for us to pass on a cost, which typically, most changes within freight rates and for shipping lines, they just have to stomach a lot of them because they're not always able to pass those additional costs onto the end customer. So really having that ability to do that traceability and the quality control from a commercial aspect will allow that us to actually then properly pass on those costs.
Thanks, Ben, for sharing, and thanks all our panelists for insights as well as your time today. So for our startups who are on the call or who will be watching this on YouTube, I ask you to put forth your proposals, and you have the opportunity to speak to these corporates who have been sharing us today, and also to potentially work together with them. Yeah, so I would like to give a quick shout out to our last few roadshows for SmartPod Challenge 2023. So with upcoming Ask Me Anything session on Thursday, 20th July, which is tomorrow, from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. So how this session would work is that we have collated questions from the solution providers, and corporates have given their responses, and we will be sharing the responses during this session. So the two innovation opportunities will be covering cyber readiness as well as transforming carbon. We also have our final roadshow, which is on 21st of July, Friday, also fully online because some of our speakers are joining us from overseas, given how global the maritime industry is. I'll be covering the innovation opportunity on voyage optimization. So be sure to don't miss that out. It's our last one for this year. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so if you'd like to learn more about the innovations opportunity that I spoke about today, you can scan the QR code on the left, or you'd like to find out about our other 12 innovation opportunities as well as our open category, you can also scan the QR code on the left. On the right, it's for you to submit your entries, so do remember to submit them by 31st of July this year. And our final slide, we'd like you to continue following us on LinkedIn. We do a lot of posts on our industry. We give shout out to our startups as well as various industry news and join our mailing list to stay up to date with what we're doing at Peers 21. Once again, thank you to all our panelists for your insights, for your time, and for sharing so willingly with our audience today, and for our attendees this afternoon as well. Wishing everyone a good afternoon ahead. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks, bye.